Part 5. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 41. After following Philia to the 5th floor, the iron door of the stairwell had been opened, and a man in a black suit with a stern hair stood at the door. The man glanced at Garin. "Are you Garin? Your uncle asked you to go to the study." Garin nodded, changed his shoes, straightened his clothes, closed the door with Philia and walked towards the study. The fireplace in the hall was burning with red charcoal, and the whole room was warm. When passing by the hall, there was a pretty girl with long red ponytail sitting on the sofa. She was lying on it and sleeping soundly in a simple white training uniform. Garin glanced at the girl, paid a little attention to her arms and legs, and then walked directly to the study room inside. There is a short corridor between the living room and the study. The walls on both sides of the corridor are inlaid with clear mirrors. Garin paused briefly as he walked to the mirror. In the mirror, he clearly saw his reflection. He has short purple-black hair, deep red eyes, and the black shirt he wears on his upper body is bulging with muscles. He looks extremely strong, and his legs are slender, with arms and waist like a wasp. It gives people a strong temperament. He is also much taller than before. Obviously he has been exercising for so long, and he is also in the growth period, so his height has grown again. After a brief pause, Garin directly pushed open the mahogany door of the study room. There were 2 rows of bookshelves in front of the walls on both sides, and a long black wooden table in the middle. The uncle and a white-haired old man were sitting at the table drinking coffee, and the room was filled with a strong aroma of coffee. Boom boom. Garin stood at the door and knocked softly. The uncle looked fatter, his thick black eyebrows were slightly wrinkled, and he shrank in his seat as if he was thinking about something. At this time, he heard Garin's knock on the door, and he raised his head slightly and looked over. "It's Garin. I was asking you a while ago why you didn't come over to see me. What have you been busy with recently? Yinger also said that she doesn't see you very much. Isn't she still practicing martial arts in that martial arts gym?" Uncle pointed. The seat opposite him said, "Come on, sit down first, we uncle and nephew haven't had a good chat for a long time." Garin nodded, walked to the seat, pulled out the seat and sat down. He glanced at the white-haired old man sitting on the side. The old man looked to be in his 70s or 80s. His hair and beard were all pale, and he was dressed in white plain clothes. What really caught Garin's attention was that from the moment he walked in, this man stared at him with a frown. Turning his gaze away from the old man, Garin sat upright and looked at his uncle. "Uncle, I heard that you said you wanted me to inherit your property. Is this true?" he asked with a serious expression. "Of course it's true." Uncle Angel raised his eyebrows and said, "This matter was decided a long time ago." His fingers tapped gently and rhythmically on the table, making a clicking sound. "How should I put it? Well, let me start from the beginning. After all, I know very well about you that you are not the kind of personality who is eager for power and money. If I don't make it clear, I'm afraid you won't be willing to let you inherit my career." Garin opened his mouth and didn't know how to answer, but it was true that, as his uncle said, he really didn't think much about these things. Maybe it was because he had superpowers and didn't pay much attention to things outside himself, or maybe it was for some other reason. As his uncle said, if he didn't make it clear, he was indeed prepared to persuade him to abandon this decision. Uncle Angel pondered for a moment. "You know the situation of my 2 children. It is impossible to hand over the property to them, that's for sure. Both Longbaz and Philia are just playful. Maybe it may change in the future, but the possibility is too small. And the young people on my wife's side of the family are too ambitious. Although they do have a lot of ability and character, there will definitely be nothing left after I hand over the property. What will happen to Philia and Longbaz in the future? I have worked hard. All the industries, businesses, and connections we created are just given to them for free? Impossible." Garin nodded. Uncle Angel smoked a cigar and started to light it slowly, and continued, I admit that this matter has indeed put you in an embarrassing situation, and I can't help you. But I really don't want everything about me. Just give it to others for nothing. I still have 2 children. Yes, Philia and Longbaz, even though Longbaz always makes me worry, he is still my child. Galleon. He raised his eyes and stared into Garen's eyes. You have shown excellent business talents since you were a child. Only you can stabilize everything for me. I know that you are not yearning for a life like mine, but think about Philia. Although Longbaz has a bad relationship with you, but Philia has always liked you, right? You like her too, right? I can make the decision to get you engaged. Garen was stunned and almost speechless. He didn't want to distract himself from other paths, but he didn't know how to refuse. And it can be seen that Uncle Angel seems to have reached a point where everything is at the end of his rope, and he is starting to make arrangements for his escape at the age of 40. Angel picked up the cigar and took a deep breath, blowing out a faint ring of white smoke from his nostrils. This matter is indeed sudden, but I hope you can think about it seriously, he said with an adult attitude. Garen nodded. If this is your wish, Uncle, he narrowed his eyes slightly and said solemnly. Can you tell me why you are so anxious to arrange these things? You are still young. Don't you think it is too early to do such a thing? Seeing that his nephew did not refuse immediately, Angel's expression gradually became relaxed. He picked up a pair of scissors and cut the cigar, holding it directly in his mouth and pointing at the white-haired old man beside him. Of course I have my reasons. Come, let me introduce you first. This is my old friend Adonis, who recently came to my place as a guest, and the one sleeping on the sofa outside is his apprentice Vinny. They are martial arts practitioners, so they should have a lot of things in common. Garen frowned. Uncle, you'd better tell me the reason, maybe. Before he could finish his words, there was a bang, and the study door was knocked open. The 3 of them looked over together. Longbaz stood panting at the door, staring at Garen fiercely. Garen. It's you again. It's you again. Garen frowned and was about to speak. Get out, Uncle Angel shouted loudly, stood up, and pointed to the door. Didn't you see I was talking? Get out. Longbaz opened his mouth to speak, but when he saw his father's ugly face, he immediately slammed the door angrily and left. Angel sat down angrily and pressed the cigar into the ashtray. This Longbaz is really getting more and more outrageous. Okay, I'm going to teach him a lesson first. You 2 can chat casually. You are both martial arts practitioners. There should be common topics. Adonis can also give you some advice. Long. He stood up, coughed twice and went straight out. With a click, the door slowly closed. Garen sat on his seat and stared at the white-haired old man opposite him quietly. The old man had been frowning at him since he walked in. The 2 looked at each other, but neither spoke. Young man, your martial arts has deviated from the right path, Adonis finally spoke slowly. Right way, Garen was slightly stunned. He originally thought that the old man would tell him about his relationship with his uncle, but he didn't expect that he would comment on his martial arts right away. Practicing martial arts is training the mind. Your mind has been affected by your own force, Adonis said solemnly. When the convenience brought by force becomes more and more obvious, you will become more and more accustomed to relying on it until you can no longer rely on it. You can't live without it. When everything you base on it, you will always live for martial arts and becoming stronger. This is a puppet. The old man stood up and walked to the window to look down. Do you think that continuously improving your strength will bring you enough security? Garen's heart trembled, and he raised his head and stared at the other party. How to say? Don't let power lose your mind. The strong will always be strong, and the weak will always be weak. Adonis shook his head, turned and walked towards the door, opened it gently, and closed it gently, but no sound was made. Garen sat in his original position, his face changing. Hooray! He stood up suddenly and touched his chest gently with his hands. The strong muscles were as hard and powerful as stones, but such strength still could not bring him inner peace. Bang! The leather baffle that Garen was holding was kicked hard, causing a circle of fine white ash to open. Immediately afterwards, there was a continuous rain of fists, hitting the same point hard like a lute. Bang 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 bang. 4 consecutive sounds overlapped in an instant, and Garen stepped back continuously. His arms could barely hold the leather baffle, and he retreated a full 5 or 6 meters. Senior Sister Tasha slowly retracted her fist and blew out a stream of white air from her mouth. The sides of her temples were blood red, which was a special feature of the secret martial arts masters of Bayun Martial Arts Hall. As she closed her fists and stood still, the red color on Tasha's temples began to slowly fade away. "It's your turn," junior brother Tasha walked over and took the baffle from Garen's hand. "Next, you attack." Okay, Garen nodded. The two were currently wearing black GI uniforms and practicing fighting in the martial arts hall on the second floor of the main hall. Bang bang. Laugh. On the newly replaced brown-red floor, the two people stood in the center, as inconspicuous as 2 small black dots. But every time they hit each other, they can shake out clear circles of white ash. The hissing sound of the rapid scraping of the ground was enough to make people grind their teeth. Garen repeatedly used flings and punches, attacking the senior sister alternately, and every attack would be accurately blocked. The senior sister has a relaxed expression and light steps. Part of the white tiger tattoo vaguely exposed on her arm comes alive in the violent movements, like a living creature. The blood-red temples and sharp eyes with a slight smile give people a vague sense of monster. After hitting 200 times in a row, Garen finally couldn't hold on anymore, stopped, took 2 steps back and stood still. Panting heavily. "Hello, senior sister. Can I ask a question?" "I can see that you are confused, right?" Senior sister Tasha walked over with a smile. Bang. She kicked Garen hard on the chest, knocking him all the way out. "The most important thing to do at this time is to fight." Tasha walked up to Garen and looked down at him. "Confusion, hesitation, cowardice, don't think about anything, because these are a waste of time. People should not live in the past." She stepped high and stepped on Garen's head like a mad elephant. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 42. Click. The wooden board was easily trampled to pieces. Garen rolled over hastily at the last moment and stood up again. Staring at Tasha calmly. "So how can you make your heart strong? Can you do it without thinking about anything?" Tasha was suddenly startled, then shrugged her shoulders and laughed. "Don't let strength lose your mind. The strong will always be strong, and the weak will always be weak." "Did someone say that to you?" "How do you know?" Garen was stunned again. "What nonsense theory," Tasha sneered. "I have killed countless such people with my own hands. Ignorance and pedantry. People trained by rubbish theories are also rubbish." She tilted her neck and moved her body. "Power is power. The stronger you are, the stronger your strength, the stronger your soul will be nourished in turn. Invincible confidence is always created by the victory brought by power. The strength of the soul is cultivated by affirming oneself again and again." Garen was silent for a moment. "In other words, as long as you have deep faith in yourself, as long as you think it is right, then it is right." "Right. That's right." Tasha put away her smile, and her temples on both sides became as red as blood. "Next, in order to let you truly understand this, I will put a little more force. I'll wipe it." Garen felt a chill in his heart, knowing that the senior sister was about to get angry again. It would definitely be uncomfortable to resist at this time. If it weren't for the second senior brother who stopped him last time, he would definitely be wounded by the senior sister. Without hesitation, Garen immediately turned around and charged forward. Among Bayun's fighting skills, this was the only one he was most familiar with. With the first step of his right foot, with a bang, Galleon rushed to the stairs in 2 steps and jumped down without looking back. Suddenly, there was a slight sound of breaking through the air behind him, and a hand slowly touched his left shoulder. The palms of his hands were silent, as if a lover were gently putting their hands on his shoulders. Garen became anxious and shot his elbow back like a sharp arrow, with the tip of his elbow being the tip of the arrow. This is the shooting pose, the most damaging to the body among the 4 major poses, and also the one with the strongest explosive power and speed. With special force-generating techniques, any part of the body can be trained to shoot like a sharp arrow at any time. Garen has only trained the elbow of his right arm. Snapped. With his elbows crotched easily, Garen kicked his feet down and continued to speed down the stairs. The speed is a little faster than usual. It was true that he used a little more of his hidden power. Dachan's Bayun's secret technique is slowly increasing his power every day. Although it has reached the limit of adult strength, it is still increasing steadily, with no intention of stopping. With this slightly accelerated fall, Garen finally escaped the pursuit of his senior sister and landed steadily at the entrance of the stairs on the 1st floor. In the morning, many students were already coming in and out of the hall on the 1st floor of the main gym. When they saw Garen jumping down from the 2nd floor, they all recognized this close disciple of the gym owner who had just joined the martial arts gym not long ago. Senior sister's rule is to stop when you get to the 2nd floor. Fortunately, we came down in time. Garen wiped his sweat and stood still. The risk is the greatest when fighting against senior sister, but it does train your nervous responsibility. Staying alert at all times will definitely result in a casualty. Now he realizes more and more that Bayun Martial Arts School is not simple. Teacher Fei Bayun is mysterious and doesn't know what to do all day long. From her tone of voice and experience, I can feel that the senior sister is definitely a murderous and terrifying person. The second senior brother is actually a senior member of the Federal Fighting Association and one of the city's amateur rank assessors. It is said that he also runs some underground industries and looks like a successful person when he walks outside. As for the third senior brother, he is completely a rich second-generation official. His father is the administrative inspector of Huaishan City, which is equivalent to the central inspector stationed in the local area. His rank is equal to that of the governor. He is the 2 most powerful people in the entire Huaishan City. 1. His mother was the daughter of an earl and her family was extremely wealthy. A few days ago, when the third senior brother was sparring with the senior sister, he somehow stimulated the senior sister, and then he was seriously injured and went home to recuperate. Garen once relied on his strong defense and agreed to sparring with his senior sister without much understanding. Unexpectedly, after just receiving a few palms, the area where he was hit immediately swelled up a large amount. After straightening his clothes, Garen called 2 staff members in the museum and asked about the whereabouts of his second senior brother and master. As expected, they didn't know. Garen drank some hot water, wiped the sweat off his body, and strolled around the museum relaxedly. Take a walk and take a break when you have free time. His body is getting stronger and stronger, and the outline of his strong muscles is difficult to hide even with a black GI. Walking by the playground, students passing by would salute and say hello to him from time to time. Drink. Drink. In the middle of the playground, there are 3 groups of students who are collectively practicing Bayun's fighting skills. These are core students who were selected from the branch library. They were all wearing white Taoist uniforms, and every move was precise. Garen was relaxing and strolling leisurely while checking the potential point under his vision, which was 155%. It's been more than a week since I went to my uncle's place, and now I have some attributes to add. I have to look carefully at what to add. In terms of skills, he doesn't plan to add them. It's a waste to add attribute points to general skills. It's only worthwhile to add special skills that are difficult to practice. But now, the explosive fist and Bioon secret techniques can't be added. Attribute points are naturally best added to one's own quality. In addition, Bioon fighting skills are the basis of the basics. Garen is prepared to thoroughly familiarize himself with each move, instead of relying on attribute points for everything. He wanted to compare the difference between the basic martial arts he had practiced and the basic martial arts skills he had added. He glanced at his current attributes. Strength 2.12, Agility 1.10, Constitution 1.35, Intelligence 1.50. Long-term exercise has improved my physique by 0.01, and my strength has improved again under the effect of Bioon's secret method. However, I can vaguely feel that 2.2 is the limit. Garen has had an intuition recently, an instinctive feeling in his body, as if his body has reached an extreme level of strength, and it will be difficult to improve even with the White Cloud secret technique. And this limit is the so-called innate physical limit, a limit that everyone has. From this point of view, it is very likely that 2.2 is my strength limit. It is still a little worse than the second senior brother. The second senior brother's strength is said to be more than 450 pounds. When converted into attributes, it is 2.25. Maybe his physique is innately stronger than I'm a little better, but it's said that I haven't grown any more for a long time. Could it be that 450 pounds is the limit of human body strength? Garen mused. Just go check the information. Just as he thought, he turned a corner and walked towards the library of the main library. Sitting at the door of the library was still the strong, bald old man, sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed. Garen's heart moved and he walked up to the old man. "Master Bai, can I ask you a question?" The bald old man closed his eyes and remained motionless. Garen was not in a hurry and stood there waiting slowly. After 4 or 5 minutes, the old man slowly opened his eyes. "Go ahead." "Excuse me, what is the ultimate strength of the human body?" Garen whispered. "Ultimate strength," the old man pondered for a moment. "According to the unit conversion here, it should be about 480 pounds. This is the strongest record ever recorded in the circle. However, different people have different limits. No matter how much they exercise, they can only reach 480 pounds. It can stop at a certain limit. Then look, with a physique like mine, how high can the ultimate strength be?" Garen pointed at himself and asked. "You," Master Bai's eyes fell on Jia Long and scanned him. "I estimate it should be between 430 and 450 pounds. So accurate," Garen was shocked. Fortunately, after he mastered the White Cloud secret technique, his body shape could suddenly change and expand, and he was very able to hide his own power. Otherwise, this old man might see something. After changing his body shape, his strength reaches the limit instantly. At the same time, the skin's defense is greatly increased, which is equivalent to twice that of the primary explosive boxing technique. If you don't have hundreds of pounds of strength with a sharp knife, you can't even think of piercing his skin. "Excuse me for disturbing you." Garen bent down and saluted, watched the old man close his eyes again, and then turned and left. "From this point of view, 240 is my limit. Every time I add an attribute point, there is an increase of 0.3, which is 60 pounds of strength. I just don't know if I can use it to break through the limit after reaching the limit." Garen felt a little uneasy. If he couldn't break through the limit, then his future development would be much more restricted. And once he can break through the limit and continue to stack, his development potential will become infinite. Maybe give it a try. His eyes fell on power. The strength attribute jumped slowly, jumping directly from 2.12 to 2.20. Suddenly, Garen's whole body went numb, and he felt that all the muscles in his body were beating rhythmically. Beats with the same rhythm as the heart. He felt his temples jumping up and down the most, as if something was about to pop out from inside. This limit lasted for more than 10 seconds and then stopped. Garen looked at the attribute column again. The strength had become 2.20, but it did not continue to increase upwards, but a new symbol appeared behind it. He knew what the symbol meant just by looking at it. Can't your physique handle excessive power? It seems that you must improve your physique simultaneously. After adding strength, there were still 0.22 attribute points left, all of which were thrown into the constitution by Galleons. The physical fitness column instantly changed from 1.35 to 1.57. After adding physical strength, Galleon felt hot inside his body, as if there was a furnace continuously roasting his internal organs. He could vaguely hear the slight sound of his own flesh and blood. The flow of blood, the beating of the sexual organs, and the squeezing of the lungs caused by breathing, made Garen feel as if he had an extra feeling, a kind of control over his body that he had never had before. Snapped. A soft sound. Garen was shocked to see that in the skill column, the still elementary explosive fist technique finally slowly jumped and became an intermediate level. An even stronger swelling sensation emerged from inside the body. Garen could barely stand walking in the corridor, he could barely steady himself by leaning on the wall. Fortunately, no one around noticed him. He felt another layer of invisible liquid slowly secreted out, penetrating from his internal organs, passing through bones, muscles, and skin, covering the surface of his body. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 43. Garen frowned, looking at Kaladu's deliberate and undisguised behavior. Knowing that I was causing a lot of stress to this former friend. Looking at Effie, who lowered her head and didn't dare to look at herself, she sighed in her heart. I know that the relationship between the two parties has almost ended since then. I have something else to do, so I'm leaving now. You guys have fun. Garen, are you alone? Why don't you come with us? It's more fun with more people. Kaladu achieved his goal and looked at Garen, a relaxed smile suddenly appeared on his face. No, I have something else to do. You guys can play and we'll talk next time when you have time. Garen didn't bother to say more to him, turned around and walked away quickly. Not long after, he left the two of them behind and turned into a street on the left. A red car slowly stopped beside Garen. As soon as the car door opened, Grace stepped out of the driver's seat. Lord Garen, I'm sorry I'm late. Grace wore a white shirt and a black OL suit. Her slender legs were wrapped in black stockings. Her long dyed brown hair was draped smoothly and neatly on her shoulders, adding a beautiful and cool temperament. Standing next to Garen, their identical red eyes matched perfectly, like a couple. It's okay, I just arrived. Garen looked around. There were fewer pedestrians on this street. There were only a few children laughing and chasing each other on the street in the distance, as if they were playing hide and seek. How have things been these past few days? Nothing happened. Grace bowed her head respectfully and replied, standing next to Garen, it really looked like the relationship between a boss and a secretary. Perhaps the other party found out my identity of the relevant company, but you invited me out without any concealment and let the other party know, is that okay? It doesn't matter. This matter cannot be concealed. Sooner or later they will find out. Why don't we tell them proactively? It just so happens that I also want to have contact with the people in Jinhuan, Garen said calmly, leaning against the car. After all, I'm not alone. Moreover, they will definitely come here this time. As Mr. Kelly, I can take advantage of the last opportunity to break into Detective Mercury. Even if they are not seeking revenge, they might ask me to cooperate. I guess the chance of cooperation is higher. Don't worry, if the other party comes here, there shouldn't be any big danger. If the Golden Circle is just an organization that makes enemies everywhere, he won't be free for so long. But you still have to be careful to carry a firearm with you, the danger is always in your mind. Lucky times come. Clear. Grace lowered her head, suddenly having the illusion that the person standing in front of her was not a 16-year-old high school student, but a mature man in his 30s or 40s. This contrast in age and temperament made her feel a little uncomfortable for a while. Is there really a so-called genius in this world? Looking back on her step-by-step transformation from an ordinary girl to what she is now, Grace suddenly felt a little uncomfortable. What's wrong? Get in the car first and take me to the antique store. You'll pick me up at 4 in the afternoon and take me to the martial arts main hall. Don't run around alone, okay? I know Grace was a little dumbfounded, feeling that she had become a child, and Garen was an elder. I have a gun, she argued, still a little unconvinced. I know. Garen opened the car door perfunctorily and got in. Grace couldn't help but feel angry, but when she thought of Garen's fierce attack, like a ferocious leopard, the pistol was really not very effective in front of him. Suddenly I felt a little unsafe. That's right. You should change your expressions more often. Don't always have a cold face. If you are so beautiful at such a young age, wouldn't it be a pity if you can't even smile? Garen sat in the passenger seat. Lean back lazily on the seat and completely relax your body. Come on, try smiling. Grace forced a smile, which even made her feel weird. Forget it, you better stop laughing, it's so miserable, Garen said helplessly, covering his face. Grace took a deep breath and forced herself not to get angry. She suddenly had the urge to kick Garen. The car started slowly, turned into an intersection along the street, and slowly disappeared. At a fast food restaurant on the street, Khalidou and Effie walked out of the store. Khalidou curled his lips and made a move in the direction Galen left. Did you see that? She is disguised enough. She usually looks low-key and inconspicuous at school, but when she is outside, she is cool and unrestrained. Beautiful women, beautiful cars, and cars are just a foil for her. Look at that model, there are not many of them. Don't even think about it if it's 10 to millions. He also felt a little bit sad. Even for himself, the pocket money his parents gave him was far from enough to buy such a car. And the cool-tempered beauty just now looked submissive and respectful to Garen. He glanced at Effie next to him again. No matter in appearance or figure, he was far inferior to that woman, and suddenly a ball of anger emerged in his heart. Snapped. Let's go. Go home quickly. Effie didn't speak, just silently followed Khalidou. Since Khalidou had a falling out with his friends because of her, his personality has become increasingly eccentric. At first she was able to seduce him, but now she feels less and less confident about her own attractiveness. Seeing Galen driving away with the beautiful woman, she suddenly felt a slight confusion in her heart. She didn't know if her continuous efforts were meaningful. The two of them followed the sidewalk and quickly turned around the corner and disappeared. Nighttime. Garen sat in the car returning, while Grace drove quietly from the side. The yellowish light of the street light kept passing over their faces. The speed of the car was very slow, and cars passed by from time to time, and even a horse-drawn carriage accelerated and passed by. As the car slowly turned into a deserted small street, a person suddenly walked out in front of him and blocked the road. There's someone in front, Grace said in a deep voice. Here we come. Garen's originally closed eyes quickly opened and he looked straight ahead through the car window. The man standing in the middle of the street was thin, wearing a gray windbreaker and a black crew cut. He looked like a private detective. The car stopped more than 3 meters away from the man. Garen opened the car door and walked out, gesturing to Grace to stay in the car. Then he walked straight towards the man in the trench coat. He noticed that the man wore a gold earring on his right ear, which was the same as number 102, except that the number was wrapped with a piece of white tape. Did you kill No. 102? The man spoke first. I am a representative sent to talk to you. His voice was dry, like someone who hadn't drank water for a long time suddenly speaking. Talk. What to talk about? Garen was stunned. He didn't expect that the other party didn't take action directly yet, but instead came up with a proposal to talk. I killed your people, aren't you ready to pursue him? You can make some amends. We have no intention of quarreling with you. We have thoroughly investigated this matter. The previous incident at the Dolphin Antique Shop was our mistake. He stretched out his hand to make an apology gesture. You actually don't have a good relationship with that great detective, right? Especially in the end, he abandoned you alone in Yinshaw Castle. It is true that we do not need to have a conflict. This is a meaningless fight. Garen nodded. So this time, I come with our sincerity. Let's just forget about the past. The man in the windbreaker straightened up and clapped his hands gently. Snap. As soon as the applause ended, a group of figures suddenly walked out of the alley on the side. They were all tall and strong adult men. These men were all holding daggers and machetes. They all sneered and quickly surrounded Garen and his car. The man in the trench coat chuckled. You can call me number 101, although the organization has issued an order not to pursue it. However, as a friend of number 102, I decided to conduct a private test on you to see if you are qualified to cooperate with us. We also need to see what you rely on to kill 102. Ah! Grace's scream suddenly came from the car behind. Garen looked back and saw that Grace was being hugged tightly by two big men, unable to move at all. He was held hostage and walked towards the river embankment. This street is a one-sided street facing the river, with residential buildings on one side and a grey-white river embankment on the other. What do you want? Garen's eyes narrowed slightly and his voice became colder. Didn't I say it? A test is just a test, number 101 said with a smile. I don't like this kind of test. Garen turned around and said calmly. Ah! Grace suddenly screamed and was pushed directly off the edge of the river embankment. Only one hand was hanging on the embankment, teetering on the edge and might fall at any time. Garen turned around and rushed towards Grace. With a shout, number 101 suddenly stood in front of him. Step aside. Now your woman is going to die. As long as you pass the test, I will let her go. But you have to do it as soon as possible. A delicate and frail woman cannot last long hanging in a place like that. Number 101 smiled. Said. He clapped his hands, and one of his men walked up to Grace with a knife. He placed the knife on the sand gull that was holding onto the river embankment, and made a cutting motion with a sinister smile. Be obedient, otherwise it would be a pity for such a beautiful beauty to die here. Number 101 chuckled. It seems that this is Jin Huan's attitude towards me. Garen suddenly smiled. Originally I kept a gentle attitude towards you. Now it seems that I was too naive. He looked past number 101 to where Grace was and closed his eyes slightly. Don't worry, Grace, I will avenge you. Bang. As soon as he finished speaking, Garen grabbed number 101 with his right hand. His thick arm instantly doubled in size, and his claws were in a radial shape. The air was torn apart and he suddenly let out a sharp scream. The thick claws are covered with veins and are almost as big as a human head. Death, the muscles on Garen's back were like waves, pushing and squeezing toward his right arm. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 44. The violent force brought up a gust of wind, and before the hand could reach it, the strong pressure squeezed number 101 slightly. Garen's right arm seemed to grow longer in an instant, swelled up, and was grabbed like a mace. Laugh. The claws passed across the side of No 101's face. Number 101 snorted and moved sideways to avoid the catch. Are you kidding a child by attacking at such a speed? Garen slowly retracted his hand, returned his arm to its original position, stood there and looked behind number 101 calmly. At the edge of the river embankment, the man holding a knife fell to the ground with a plop, and a trace of blood slowly flowed from his head. A book-shaped pendant slipped on his clothes. "You guy." 101's face darkened and he looked back. "It seems I have to break the rules this time." He suddenly pulled off his windbreaker and threw it away, revealing the tight-fitting black leather vest underneath, revealing his streamlined muscle lines. "Hold one hand diagonally in front of you, the palm of the other hand outward, and bend over. Put on a weird fighting stance." "Oh? Are you a martial arts practitioner too?" Garen looked at the opponent's posture with a hint of surprise on his face. He noticed that the knife in the opponent's right hand seemed to have a different color than normal skin. It was a light rusty red. Bang bang. Suddenly 2 gunshots were heard from the next street. It seemed extremely harsh over the quiet streets at night. 101 heard the gunfire, looked to the right, his expression changed, and he suddenly put away his posture. The situation has changed. Everyone retreat. The strong men surrounding Garen also seemed to become nervous. One by one, they quickly put away their knives and other weapons and ran towards the next street. They soon disappeared into the alley leading to the next block. 101 gave Garen a cold look at the end. "I'll come back to you." He tiptoed, picked up his windbreaker, put it on and left, quickly disappearing into the alley. Like a gray bat disappearing into the shadows. Garen frowned and watched the group of people disappear into the alley, his muscles slowly relaxing. "It's a pity that my speed was too slow, otherwise I might have a chance to keep this person this time." He pulled the collar of his clothes and walked quickly to the edge of the river embankment. Snapped. He grabbed Grace's right hand, slowly lifted her up and hugged her, then slowly lowered her to stand on the ground. "Are you okay?" "It's okay. Fortunately, you scared those people just now, otherwise it would be really troublesome this time." Grace was shocked. He glanced at the dead man with the golden ring on the ground beside him. "Jin Huan actually dared to attack me as a senior cadre of the company. Lord Garen, please excuse me for a while. I must return to the company immediately to report this matter to the headquarters." Grace's face gradually turned cold. "Although our manlaton is not as good as the golden ring, we are not easy to mess with either." "Okay, you go." Garen nodded. "I still have to go next door to see what's going on. Something happened just now that lured them all away. Pay attention to your own safety, it's best to deploy more manpower for protection. Yourself. Where's your gun?" Grace's face turned red. "Before I had time to take it out, I was attacked and caught from behind." "Be careful, I'll go take a look first." Garen couldn't help but laugh. "Where has your fierceness gone? When you first met me," he touched Grace's hair and rubbed it as if it were a child. After rubbing it and picking up the pendant, Garen turned and walked towards the alley. His height is already over 1.7 meters, which has not changed. He is slightly taller than Grace. There seemed to be something very natural about making this move, which made people completely ignore his current age. Grace stood there, gritting her teeth and looking slightly red. "You told me not to treat me like a child." She quickly got into the car, took out the pistol from her handbag and held it in my hand. Then she started the car, turned a corner and drove towards the company. Garen walked along the alley and soon heard the sound of fists hitting flesh, and each punch was accompanied by groans and screams of pain. "Catch him and don't let him run away." Gallo passed out? Damn it. This guy's fists are so heavy. Watch the gap. Don't give him a chance. The shouts of a group of men came one after another, as if they were besieging someone. Garen stood in the shadows at the entrance of the alley and looked out. On the street, on the dirty dirt floor, a group of men from the Golden Circle organization were surrounding 2 thin teenagers. Number 101 was standing on the periphery, staring at the field with a cold expression, and at the same time seemed to be alert to the surrounding movements. There were already 3 or 4 adult men lying on the ground. They all seemed to have been hit in the face and fainted. Garen briefly inspected the injuries of the wounded and let out a light sigh. This kind of intensity is almost the same as the intensity I used to kill people for the first time. Could it be that these two children were responsible for killing these people? His eyes immediately fell on the two teenagers in the field. The two were a boy and a girl. The boy was handsome and the girl was innocent. They looked to be only 15 or 16 years old, the same age as Garen, but the look in their eyes showed that this was not the first time they had encountered such a dangerous situation. The two were wearing white sportswear, standing back to back, assuming a standard boxing fighting posture. "My dad will come to save us right away," the boy gritted his teeth, "he won't let you go." "Don't talk too much, save some energy," the girl whispered, with a black pistol on her waist. 101 sneered and walked forward quickly. "I'm here. You guys surround them and don't let them escape. This kid is Bai Ying's son. It's hard to catch him but we can't fall short." He walked into the encirclement and stood still, with one hand raised and the palm of the other hand facing outward. His body was slightly arched, assuming the same fighting posture as before. Vaguely, Garen noticed that the knife in his right hand seemed to be redder than before. "It's like congestion, and it seems like blood may overflow at any time." "Boy, you dare to fight me? You are asking for death. Don't blame me if you are disabled somewhere. Stop talking nonsense. Let's do it." The boy straightened his body and interrupted the other person. Before he finished speaking, there was a sneer. A red shadow streaked across his chest, and the white sportswear was ripped open silently. A bloody gash was cut on the wheat-colored skin inside, and blood slowly oozed out. The red shadow disappeared in a flash and returned to the sword in 101's right hand. The boy's face turned pale. The moment the red shadow passed over him, he quickly exhaled and closed his chest. If he had been a little slower, his chest would have been broken open. But at this time, because I exhaled so quickly and violently, my breathing was a little uncomfortable and my lungs hurt. "Civica. Are you okay?" the girl said hurriedly, "Be careful. The opponent is practicing red-hand boxing." "It's okay, I avoided it," the boy Civica coughed twice and replied, still staring at 101 in front of him. "It's been delayed long enough." 101 resumed his previous posture. "I just gave you a warning before, now, I will cripple your right arm." His black eyes became colder and colder, with a hint of murderous intent. Tisk tisk tisk. There were 3 soft sounds in a row, and the boy Civica fell back and quickly dodged 2 knives, but the third one made a bloody cut on the clothes of his right hand with a hiss. Red blood quickly, then white tracksuit. "Did you hide well? Come again." 101 became a little angry. "Death." His right hand shook violently and slashed at the boy's limbs like a machete. He actually struck out 4 knives in 2 seconds. Each of the 4 knives was struck extremely fast, and only a trace of red shadow could be seen. The two retreated one after another. Laugh. A stone street lamp was scratched, and with a snap, fine cement residue was chopped out. It actually chopped up the cement poured into the street lamp like a real machete. There was another series of soft sounds, and a wound was made on the boy's right leg because he couldn't dodge. This caused his right leg to bend and he could hardly stand up straight. "Civica," the girl cried out anxiously. Garen stood at the entrance of the alley, and the steps he originally planned to take out suddenly retracted. "White Eagle? Is he the guy with Mercury in the tower? If it's that guy, it'll be a bit troublesome. I can't let them see my true face." He looked around and took a deep breath. Bang! A punch hit the wall on the right side of the alley entrance. A depression the size of a bowl suddenly appeared on the wall, and large chunks of cement were scattered and scattered. Galen reached out and grabbed a piece of broken cement, rubbed it with his hands, and it turned into a large amount of white-gray cement slag. Then he wiped it on his face, and his face suddenly became so gray that he could not distinguish his features. "Who is this?" The people outside heard the movement in the alley and shouted immediately. Garen slowly walked out of the alley. Watch the changes in the field. After only a short delay, the boy in the field had his left arm chopped off again, with only one leg left to support his body from falling. The girl was surrounded by other people, and the situation was terrible. And 101 was standing in the field with his back to him. Hearing the movement behind him, 101 turned around and glanced at Garen. Is it you? Do you also want to take a trip into this muddy water? Before Galen could answer, he suddenly sneered. Okay, we're here today, let's just deal with it together. Bang. The girl on one side was kicked in the abdomen, staggered back a few steps, and was immediately punched in the vest by someone behind her. She fell to her knees with a plop, her face was pale, and she could hardly breathe. The pistol on his waist was also shot off at some point. Eve, the boy Siwaka half knelt on the ground and shouted anxiously. 101 turned around and walked directly towards Garen without looking at the boy who was almost losing his fighting ability. You didn't run away when you had such a good opportunity just now. Should I say you are stupid or an idiot? I don't know why the higher UPS pay so much attention to you. He pointed back to the boys and girls who were being beaten. Did you see that? This is the result of opposing our golden ring. Even the son of Bai Ying and the daughter of Mercury in the tower can only be obediently allowed to be slaughtered by us. Garen shook his shoulders, and there was a crisp sound of joints all over his body. There's so much nonsense, just do it. In return, I will make your death easier. This is what I want to say. As soon as 101 finished speaking, he rushed towards Garen at an extremely fast speed. The moment he rushed in front of Garen, he swiped his feet and turned to the left to slash out with his hand knife. Laugh. Garen only felt a pain in his left arm, and his clothes were torn with a hiss. He looked at the injury and saw a faint red mark on his skin. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 45. What a sharp hand knife. My body has reached the second level of explosive boxing. The skin on my whole body is much tougher than cowhide. Even if I stab hard with a dagger, it is difficult to stab me. Such a light hand knife of his can actually hit. There are red marks left on my body. In other words, one more cut on the same part will completely break through my defense. Garen was shocked. The blow was so fast that he couldn't keep up with it. He only felt his eyes blurred as his left arm was struck in one blow. When he looked at 101 again, the other party had already retreated 3 meters away and was staring at him with cold eyes. Is it the speed type again? Garen's expression calmed down. 101 was really shocked at this moment. His knife didn't even scratch the opponent's skin. This level of defense. This level of hard Kagong. I haven't encountered it in many years. This man is so strong. It seems that he must be attacked, otherwise it will not hurt him at all. He's not as fast as me and can't keep up with me at all. You can just wander around and test his weakest part first. With his thoughts fixed, 101 once again assumed an offensive posture, kicked off his feet, and rushed towards Garen again. The sword in his right hand instantly turned into a red shadow and disappeared in front of him. Laugh. Garen's right arm was also hit by a knife. He grabbed it with his claws and missed it. Then I felt a pain in my back, and my vest was stabbed hard. Death, he roared, his arms bulged, and his muscles instantly expanded. Drag shape. The arms are like two elephant trunks, suddenly swinging to the right, forming a rotating posture. Hiss. Garen spun around in a circle, and the swing he threw out with his arms was still in vain, and a clear black circle was drawn under his feet by his boots. It's just that the agitated air blows in all directions, forming a small breeze. Figure number 101 stepped back 2 meters, took a short rest, and then pounced on him again. The red shadow unfolded and stabbed Garen's lower abdomen with a sharp knife. I don't believe I can't find your weakness. The hand knife moved upward again, and with a tearing sound, the clothes on Garen's chest were cut open. Bang! Garen grabbed the empty space with his palms in front of him, and then his eyes blurred again, a red shadow flashed, and he was stabbed in the lower abdomen with a hand knife again, and a stabbing pain suddenly came faintly. Injured, he could imagine the injury to his lower abdomen. Although it was not deep, it definitely pierced the skin. We must find a way to restrain the opponent's speed. Otherwise, even if I can handle it, I will still be able to win. His thoughts were suddenly interrupted, and the armpit of his left arm suddenly hurt again, and he was hit by another knife in the hand. Damn it, Garen got a little angry. If I hadn't practiced my shooting form to the point where I could use it all over my body, you guys would have died. He punched hard with a straight punch. Click. 101 dodged and hit the wooden board with his fist. In a closed shop on the street, the wooden door was directly punched through, and yellow wood slag flew out and scattered everywhere. Bang! There was another loud noise, and Garen punched the air, hitting the stone wall, creating a crack and depression as big as a bowl. Are you just running around like a bug? Damn monkey, Garen roared angrily, and punched 101 again. He lowered his head and avoided it easily. His right fist and wrist hurt, and Garen became even more angry. You damn gray-skinned monkey! Boom! He stepped on the concrete floor and made a small crater. Then he swung his arms and hit 101 hard on a street lamp where he was hiding. Click! The thigh-thick cement street lamp post was directly shaken by the swing. Fine cracks quickly spread in the hit area, and fine cement slag flew away. Everyone else in the audience fell silent, and all the people with more than 10 golden rings were silent. Seeing the terrifying destructive power of Garen like a violent bear, each and every one of them felt their legs become weak. A few of them had quietly retreated to inconspicuous corners, ready to flee the scene at any time. The two boys and girls surrounded were watching the fight between Garen and 101 with their mouths open. This man's physique is too strong, Saiwaka murmured, with such terrifying muscle defense, there is nothing wrong with hitting a cement pillar. It's too scary. However, the girl Eve took advantage of the others to be frightened and quietly ran to the boy and sat down. This man and Jin Huan seem to be enemies. His strength and resistance are too strong. He should have practiced martial arts like hard Qigong. It's just that the speed is slow and his body can't keep up with the opponent's movements. We'd better hide aside first and escape when you get the chance. Bang! Another dent was made in the metal door of another store. 101 flew back, jumped back, and stood 2 meters away, with cold sweat all over his face. Blood was slowly oozing from the tip of his nose, which was scratched by the splashing cement slag just now. His chest was heaving violently, and his lungs were like bellows, breathing in the air frantically. The sweat was almost reaching his eyes, but he didn't dare to make any move to wipe it away. His eyes were fixed on Garen opposite him, fearing that the opponent would seize the opportunity by accident. One punch, his heart was beating violently, which was a reaction to excessive blood supply. Just one punch. I will die. 101 comes to a conclusion in an instant. What's wrong? Gray-skinned monkey. Garen took a long breath and walked over with a sneer. Is this the end? I haven't used my full strength yet. His fists collided, making a wooden banging sound, as if the fists were not made of flesh and blood. Boom! Suddenly, a gunshot pierced the night sky. There was silence. The two boys and girls covered their mouths tightly and looked at the scene not far away. The surrounding Jinhuan subordinates also stared blankly at the sudden scene. 101's eyes were cold, and he slowly put down the silver pistol in his hand, with white smoke still rising from the muzzle. Sorry, I am not a pure warrior. Garen stared blankly down at his chest, where a blackened bullet hole was clearly imprinted on the pit of his heart between his breasts. Snapped. He suddenly pressed the injured area and pressed lightly with his fingers. A brass-colored bullet fell to the ground, making a slight sound. Hiss. The whole place gasped. Everyone was stunned. He actually blocked the bullet. Saiwaka was stunned and swallowed her saliva. I am not wrong, right? No, no, the girl Eve was also stunned, not knowing how to react at all. I have only heard that warriors who have reached the top level of martial arts can be fired without fear of pistols, but is his martial arts already at its peak? No, no, this person's hard Qigong is too terrifying. Eve swallowed, her voice trembling with shock. You guy. 101's whole body trembled, his face became violently distorted, and he stepped backwards. Bang 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 bang. Then there was the click 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 sound of an empty gun, no bullets left. 101 looked pale and was still pulling the trigger crazily. Garen looked down at the 5 gun holes on his chest. The muscles in his body bulged, and all the remaining 4 bullets were squeezed out and fell to the muddy ground. It's over. He stepped forward suddenly, and with a muffled bang, he flew forward and punched 101 who was still frantically pulling the trigger. Bang! 101's head exploded like a watermelon, spraying backwards into a complete fan shape. The loss of concentration at this moment prevented 101 from showing the speed it should have. In addition, he was almost at the limit of his physical strength and lacked explosive power. Finally, he was directly hit by Garen's punch. Being blown away. A subordinate of Jinhuan was so frightened that he trembled all over and took several steps back. Ah! Someone screamed. All the people in Jinhuan dispersed in a rush. The 2 boys and girls stared blankly at everything on the field, completely stunned by the bloody scene. Don't look. A pair of big hands gently covered their eyes. Garen retracted his fist and looked calmly at 101 on the ground opposite. Killing again. This is not the first time he has killed someone. Since the first time he accidentally killed someone, he felt as if he was becoming more and more indifferent to life. Whenever you see the soft necks and fragile bodies of the people around you, as long as you don't pay attention and pinch it gently, a life will be lost. People have been using such weak bodies to live peacefully, just like ants, although they are fragile, but there is still an orderly division of labor. He felt like he was slowly undergoing some strange changes. Young man, that's not real martial arts. A calm and deep male voice came from the side. Garen turned his face and met a pair of clear black eyes. Your boxing skills have already entered the devil's path. It was a muscular middle-aged man with blonde hair. His short hair was like a burning golden flame, beating in the night wind. The man was dressed in white, covering the eyes of the 2 children with his hands, and was staring at Garen seriously and calmly. Magic way, Garen was stunned. He looked down at 101's headless body. It is true that someone once told me that my martial arts has deviated from the right path. But what is the right path and what is the devil's path? Who makes the distinction here? The pursuit of power by any means necessary. Power is will. This is the characteristic of the devil. The blonde man turned the 2 children's backs and stood up. Martial arts are terrifying killing techniques created by humans in order to fight against more powerful creatures. It is not used for cannibalism. Let alone meaningless cannibalism. I was just defending myself. Garen calmed down and said calmly. But you don't have to actually kill him. Just injure him and restrain him, right? Eve, the girl who had just turned around, suddenly turned around and said loudly. Eve. Don't mess with him. The boy Saiwaka grabbed the girl's arm in fear. That martial art of yours was created simply for killing people. Who is your teacher? The blonde man asked in a deep voice. Garen did not answer, but took a deep look at the 3 of them, turned around and walked towards the alley where he came from, and soon disappeared into the shadows. The blonde man looked around the whole place, and suddenly his eyes froze, staring closely at the cracked concrete lamppost that was about to break. This kind of boxing style. Demonic Elephant Gate. In his mind, he suddenly recalled the back of the monstrous and terrifying woman he met back then. The white tiger tattoo on the woman's naked back twisted and roared, as if a real white demon tiger was charging towards him. "Don't mess with this person in the future," the man came back to his senses and said to the two children in a deep voice. "You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment." Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 46. At night, on the street beside the river embankment, Garin was walking slowly along the river bank in a black coat. The river water on the left kept lapping at the river bank, making a gurgling sound. Mixed with the sound of the cold and damp night wind, it gives people a feeling of early winter. Garin walked slowly with his hands in his trouser pockets, wearing a torn shirt under his outer coat. He unbuttoned his clothes and looked down at his chest. On the exposed skin, the original red marks and scratches had slowly disappeared. He reached out and pressed his lower abdomen, but there was still a slight pain there. At the corner of the street in front, an old woman in a gray dress was walking slowly pushing a trolley. There was a cylindrical black container on the cart. The outside of the container was written in chalk, "To UN Milk." A little girl in white clothes, wrapped thickly, hurried to the trolley, took out a banknote and handed it to the old woman, then took a cup of hot milk and left slowly. Garin tightened his tight clothes and felt a little cold, so he walked forward a few steps faster. "Please give me a drink." Okay, the old woman's face was wrinkled and her skirt was wrinkled, but she looked very neat. She took out a small yellow paper cup from the car, poured a cup of hot milk from the side of the cylindrical container, and handed it to Garin. After giving him 2 UN, Garin held the paper cup in both hands and walked to an arc-shaped corner that was protected from the wind. There were advertising boards of closed shops on both sides, forming a small space that was protected from the wind. Garin leaned his back against the wall and watched the milk trolley slowly swaying toward the distance. From time to time, residents ran out of their residences to buy, stopping and walking. The scene where he punched number 101 just now suddenly resurfaced in his mind. Killing again, Garin closed his eyes, seeming to recall the previous scene. "I have innate abilities that others don't have, and I can quickly shorten the huge gap accumulated over the years with others. But I also lack the tempering of willpower and character in this accumulation process. The rapid increase in power leads to the uncontrolled release of desires. Is this the fundamental problem I have now? The righteous path or the devil's path?" He smiled. "It's surprising that there is still such a division in this era, the era of guns. Martial arts has gradually declined, and is changing from a killing tool to a physical exercise. There are still people who value such a concept." After calming down, he interrupted his thoughts and took a sip of hot milk. The steaming white air hit his face, and the hot and rich aroma of milk penetrated his nose, giving him an unusually pleasant feeling. "In the fight with Golden Ring 101 just now, my speed was obviously too slow, so I couldn't keep up with the opponent's rhythm. However, my strength and defense are strong enough. It doesn't matter how many times he hits me. I just need to fight. Hitting him once is enough to decide the outcome. This is also the advantage of the strength type. But after all, my fighting skills have not been honed to perfection. If the skills reach a certain level of perfection and I can adapt to all changes, no matter how fast he moves, he will not be able to do it. I can move my arms, legs and feet very quickly. I will definitely be able to deal with this type of opponent easily," Garin concluded while drinking milk. "And I made the right choice to strengthen my physical strength in advance. Otherwise, no matter how fast I go, the battle will be over with just one hit from the pistol bullet. This route is much safer. Unfortunately, I am still at the level of basic skills. I will fix the details first. You have to practice the moves well." Finally, After drinking the milk, he crumpled the paper cup into a ball and threw it into the trash can of the store aside. Right now, I am purely relying on my strong physical fitness to fight hard. It will be different when my fighting skills are honed and matured. Walking out of the space, Galen walked along the street to the stone bridge in front. After crossing the stone bridge, he walked straight along the street for 10 minutes until he reached Lancha Street, where Galen's house was located. This area is already considered a suburb and belongs to the outer area like Blue Tree Street. Clang clang clang. The bell in the distance started ringing again, 10 times in total. Is it already 10 o'clock? Garen quickened his pace. Huaishan was very deserted at night. Except for the occasional carriage and vehicle passing by on the street, there were almost no pedestrians on the street. Having just escaped from the fierce fight, feeling this unusual tranquility, Garen suddenly felt particularly relaxed. When walking on the street, no one knows who he is, so there will be no ill intentions, and there is no need to worry about a lack of security. As long as the methods are not specifically targeted at him, ordinary people are as weak as chickens in his hands. Along the street, we crossed the stone bridge. On the other end of the bridge, there were a few gangsters who were drunk and sitting on the ground bragging. As they passed by, they smelled a strong smell of pungent alcohol. Garen touched the handrail of the stone bridge with his hand, and the clear touch of the cold, rough grey-white stone came into his mind. He suddenly felt a dull pain in his chest and abdomen. It is known that the impact of the bullet caused some damage to the internal muscles of the body. He tore off the torn shirt a few times, crumpled it into a ball and stuffed it into the trash can on the side. He put on his coat with only his upper body naked, and walked quickly towards home. Not far away, a bright white car slowly drove towards him, turned a corner on the street, and moved slowly with him. The car window was rolled down, revealing Grace's cold and tired face. I have already approved the specific application. Even if it is a golden ring, it must abide by everyone's rules when it comes to our Huaishan. They must give an explanation for our attack no matter what, she whispered. Garen jogged to keep up with the speed of the car. 101 is dead, he said calmly. Dead? Grace glanced at Garen and noticed the unusually calm expression on his face, as well as the grey and white stone powder all over his face, and she suddenly understood. I know, I'll handle it. I went back to the company this time and got a new piece of information. Jinhuan actually sent people to kidnap the son and daughter of Mercury and Beiying in Tailai. Their whereabouts are unknown now. They are obviously preparing for a big move. Garen evened out his breathing rate. I saved those two children, but it's a pity that they didn't appreciate it. Grace was stunned for a moment, as if she didn't expect that so many things would happen to her just after leaving for such a short time. Then, they didn't see your real face, she noticed the white ash on Garen's face. Probably not, but since she is Tailai Mercury's daughter, this disguise may not be able to hide her from her. She is a very tough girl. Garen recalled that the little girl suddenly stood up and questioned his expression and tone, slow to answer. By the way, do you know the divisions of factions in the martial arts world? He added. Faction divisions? Grace asked doubtfully. I don't know much about this, but I just heard that the martial arts world is divided into orthodox martial arts that strengthen oneself and the mind, and unorthodox martial arts that focus on extreme evolution of oneself to kill people. Martial arts? Really? Garen's eyes flashed. Then do you know any famous examples of celebrities in unorthodox martial arts? This Grace frowned and pondered for a while. Even if you have one master, there are several martial artists in the province who all share this type of philosophy. They all have a decisive influence on the underground forces in the province. It seems that non-orthodox martial artists are doing well, but what about the orthodox martial artists? It's more or less the same. Apart from not being too involved in underground forces, everything else is just like unorthodox. Grace asked doubtfully, didn't your senior brothers and sisters tell you about these things? Garen shook his head. Arriving at the residential complex on Lancia Street ahead, Garen waved to Grace. I'm going back first, be careful when you go back by yourself. Don't worry, I have mobilized enough manpower to deal with this matter this time. A trace of murderous intent flashed in Grace's eyes. The police department has also taken care of it. This time, I want to give Jinhuan an unforgettable experience. Lesson. Garen saw the determination in Grace's eyes and didn't say much. When he walked into the gate of the community, the old guard looked at him and continued to smear on the paper, not knowing what he was drawing. Entering the stairs, I could faintly hear the cries of children upstairs, and the hoarse male voice singing from the record player. Stepping up a few steps at a time, he soon reached the floor where he lived. There was no light in the dark corridor. Garen walked quietly to the door, took out the key and inserted it gently into the keyhole. Click. The door lock was turned open, and it was dark and silent inside. Garen closed the door gently, changed his shoes and walked into the living room. Suddenly, I saw a dark figure sitting quietly on the sofa in the living room. It turned out to be a person. Ying-er? What are you doing sitting here? Garen was slightly startled and saw clearly that it was his sister who was sitting there. Ying-er sat on the sofa without any response, her head lowered, and it was so dark that her expression could not be seen clearly. Only the dim light from the opposite floor shone through the window and fell next to her. Garen noticed that his sister was wearing a black waist skirt, a dark bow on her head, and thick cotton pantyhose underneath the skirt. He sat on the sofa motionless and didn't reply. Since time traveling, he has cared about this sister in his heart, knowing that Yi Ying-er's character would not normally lead to such a situation. He followed and sat on the sofa next to his sister. What's wrong? What happened today? Aren't you going to play at Bibo Lake with your classmates tomorrow? Ying-er didn't reply, but after a long time, she spoke softly. I won't go tomorrow. What happened? Garen frowned. For him, home and outside were two completely different worlds. This small house at home was a safe haven where he didn't have to worry about anything. There were only and without any scheming. Only when he is with his sister who treats him wholeheartedly can he relax completely. And his sister Ying-er is also the person he least wants to be harmed by. It's nothing, just leave it alone. Ying-er turned her head. I'm just a little tired. Garen smiled, reached out and grabbed his sister's cheeks, and pulled hard. Awu, what are you doing? Ying-er was furious. She reached out and grabbed Garen's wrist and tried to pull it away, but she was not strong enough and her struggle was ineffective. Don't think so much at home. Have a good rest. After a sleep, all worries will disappear. Garen let go. Don't forget that I and my parents are still at home. You're looking for death. Ying-er stood up immediately and punched and kicked Garen, all without any rules. But even so, she tried her best to hold back her strength for fear of hurting Garen. You underestimate your brother too much. Garen chuckled, stood up straight and allowed her to hit him randomly. Are you tickling me? Ah, Ying-er was completely furious. It seems you don't know how powerful I am. Boom. She punched Garen hard in the face. I'll rub it. Don't hit me in the face. Garen was shocked and hurriedly avoided the second punch. Holding his head and hiding in the living room. Ying-er followed closely behind, chasing and beating her, and the two of them chased and ran around the living room. After fighting for a while, Ying-er finally got tired, so she stopped and sat down on the sofa. It's only been a few months, but you've obviously put on a lot more flesh. What do you eat every day? You're so perverted. She rubbed her little fist, but instead of hurting Galleon, her fist became very red. I told you that I am practicing martial arts and I am a formal apprentice. I am definitely no better than you. Garen deliberately made a proud expression. You guys are so infuriating. Ying-er felt that her fists were itching again. She took a few deep breaths and suppressed the urge to hit someone. By the way, you've been out all day during this period. What have you been doing? It's a holiday. Did you find a job by yourself? Garen followed and sat down. It's okay. Don't I have to run at night? And I have to practice basic skills in the martial arts gym. It's normal to be late when I come back. It's not good if you come back too late, Yinger pouted. Also at school, they said, you and Effie. I was totally wronged in this matter. Garen was extremely helpless and began to explain the whole process to his sister in detail. The two of them sat on the sofa and chatted casually. They chatted for more than 2 hours without knowing it, and it was past 12 o'clock and into the early morning. Yinger was still sitting on the sofa, with no intention of going back to her room. She was actually very sleepy. When Jia Long wasn't paying attention, she opened her mouth slightly and yawned quietly. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 47. Are you sleepy? If you are sleepy, go to sleep. Jia Long was also sleepy, but seeing that his sister didn't want to go to bed, it was rare that Yinger was in a bad mood and needed relief, so he just stayed with her. I'm not sleepy at all. Just go to bed when you feel sleepy. Are you sleepy? Yinger calmly moved closer to Galleon. His arms pressed against Garen's bulging arm muscles, and a sense of solidity suddenly came over him. It was a rare opportunity for the two of them to sit together and chat for so long. Then, since you're not going tomorrow, do you have any other plans? Garen asked casually. Can't we just stay at home? Yinger thought for a moment. How about I go with you to see the training at your martial arts school? Are you welcome? Not welcome, Garen answered immediately without thinking. You guy, Yinger started gearing up again. Don't do it. It's not my decision. As you know, other people are not allowed to watch the secrets of martial arts. These are the rules, Garen quickly explained, knowing that teasing her would cause a scene. That's true. What about when you finish practicing? I've been to the martial arts gym. I heard that a beautiful sister comes to pick you up every day, right? A smile appeared on Yinger's face, but it just gave people a stiff look. A feeling of this. Garen didn't expect that his sister would go to the Bayun martial arts school and even inquire about his situation with the people inside. Knowing the existence of Grace, he suddenly felt a little headache. He had already felt that Yinger had a special attachment and complex towards him. It was not just between brother and sister, but there was also a special element in it. Okay, I'm sleepy and I'm going to bed. Yinger stood up and walked towards her bedroom. Garen didn't know how to explain it. Grace's matter was related to a series of secret things, and it would be very troublesome once it was involved. Yinger is just an ordinary person, and getting involved will not bring good results. Actually, it's normal. You've reached this age and have needs in this area. I used to be too in charge of you. Yinger stood at the door of the bedroom and suddenly turned around and said. After saying that, Yinger closed the door directly with a bang. Garen moved his neck wordlessly. In desperation, I had to wash up and go back to the room to rest. Snapped. Square your fists. If your posture is crooked, your center of gravity will be crooked as well. Practicing like this for a long time will cause huge wear and tear on your knees, leaving irreversible hidden injuries. The martial arts performance hall in the main hall. The second senior brother, Falak, stood beside Garen, correcting his basic posture with both hands. Standing together, the two looked like an adult and a child. Although Garen has become stronger and taller during this time, he is still far behind his second senior brother Farak. Farak's upper body was naked, and his body was bronzed. His muscles were like poured cement pillars, and blue veins could be vaguely seen on the surface of his skin. Like the eldest sister, he also has a white tiger tattooed on his body, but it's just on his chest. As for the elder sister, it was on her back and spread to her arms. Moreover, his long gray hair hangs casually on his shoulders, and he wears white trousers and a belt, giving him a strong temperament that is a blend of barbarism and civilization. In addition to many basic offensive and defensive fixed moves, martial arts consists of more basic training methods. I remember I told you that these training methods were summarized by predecessors over a long period of time. What kind of skills are not effective? It will damage your own body, such as muscles, ligaments, and bones. What kind of techniques can achieve the greatest fighting effect and minimize the harm to yourself? These are summarized by countless seniors with their own bodies, and they are the fundamental secrets of training the human body itself. Farik patted Garen's back as he stood upright in Bayun's fighting skills training posture. Garen, you must remember that there cannot be any deviation in this posture. You must pay attention to the center of gravity of the body and the stability of the frame. You must not make any mistakes in your movements. The most important thing is that you must stand up with a mountain-like momentum. I feel very heavy, very heavy. If you make a mistake and stand for a long time, your knees and shoulders will have problems. Garen nodded vigorously. I know. Second senior brother. Farik looked at Garen's posture with satisfaction. It looks like an elephant raising its front legs. Some people who are new to martial arts and have no foundation in martial arts think that as long as they understand the core theory of martial arts, they can create moves and styles as they like, and the styles they create are much better than routines. They think that these routines are traditional inheritance. It's used to imprison people's thinking. It's completely useless and just a showpiece. This statement is only one-sided. It's a pity that they only saw one side. From the actual combat point of view, the free play style is indeed very strong, but it is established on the basis of complete disregard for physical damage. It is a way to hurt others first and hurt yourself first, and it is also a way to seek death. Generally speaking, the stronger these martial artists are, the shorter they live, although they are indeed very strong in actual combat. Falak followed Galen in the same pictographic posture. The frame will change with the development of martial arts in the times. Our giant elephant gates frame was not like this in the past. Now this frame has been modified and improved by the teacher. Therefore, this frame should stand up to your own feelings, and feel that you are the calmest. The most unshakable feeling of shelf, this is the right thing. He folded his arms and raised them flat in front of his chest, his back was slightly arched, his knees were slightly bent, and his feet stood firmly in front of one another. The shelf feels solid and unshakable at first glance. Everyone's body structure has small differences. You have to find out what suits you best in order to stand out in the right way for yourself. Garen nodded, closed his eyes slightly, and imagined that he was a giant elephant with his legs raised. But there is no such thing as the most stable feeling in the body. Second senior brother Farik's voice sounded next to him again. You have to keep fine-tuning, and you can't blindly imitate others. No matter how well you imitate, no matter how flawless it is, it will be wrong for you. Because it is someone else's frame, and it only suits his body, not you. Yes, Garen began to adjust his stance again. The so-called shelf is something that every sect has inherited for a long time. Farik's voice moved from the left to the front. In addition to exercising the body structure and allowing one to reach the best fighting skills, the reason why the rack is handed over to you today is that the rack also has a core function, which is to fight. Fight. Yes, the original purpose of the rack was to achieve a purpose. This purpose is to use the fastest and most convenient killing move, Farik explained. Each sect has different fighting styles, which also results in different frames. The role of fighting postures is generally twofold. One is to facilitate your moves. The other is to prevent your opponent from knowing the rules of your moves. Therefore, the frame must be tolerant. A large number of changes diverge, achieving the effect of repeated changes in subsequent changes. Okay, let's try the shelf now. Falak patted Garen on the shoulder. You have almost practiced the 4 major forms. You should be more proficient. Come here now. Garen nodded, opened his eyes, put away his frame, and followed Farrak to a wider area. "Now you come and attack me, you can attack me however you want," Farrak put on the air of a giant elephant and said calmly to Garen. "Yes." Garen moved his body and looked at Farrak opposite, his eyes slowly calmed down. "Oops." He punched him. Snapped. Farrak moved his left hand and easily guided his swinging fist to the side. The punch was originally aimed at the side of Farrak's waist, but was deflected away and completely missed. Garen kicked forward again, using almost a third of his strength. His right foot accurately stepped on the gap between Farrak's arms. Just as he was about to continue moving forward, he suddenly felt pain in his ankle, and his right leg was directly clamped up and down by Farrak's arms. Crack. Falak made an up and down movement with his arms, imitating the sound of breaking bones in his mouth, with a hint of cruelty. "This way your foot will be broken directly in two." Putting down Garen's legs, he assumed the posture of a giant elephant again. This stand can handle most attacks from the front, left and right sides, and up and down. Only attacks from behind are difficult to take into account. And this is also a problem that most martial artists need to face, so you have to remember that you absolutely cannot turn your back to the enemy. A good martial artist will never let himself turn his back to the enemy no matter what the situation is. Nu. Jia Long nodded heavily, knowing that this was the experience of his second senior brother. Many times, you know a truth or an experience, but if you don't experience its effect personally, then you won't have much feeling, let alone practical application. So I give you a suggestion: practice it, and be safe when it comes to safety. Under the guaranteed conditions, experience it yourself. Only in this way can you firmly remember it with your body. Farrak put away his posture and smiled. "Senior brother, what practice are you talking about?" Garen was stunned. "Go and get a rank. In the amateur rank competition, you can really see a variety of different styles. Practice the experience and knowledge you have learned, so that you can be convinced. Anyway, your explosive boxing has reached the stage of good defense." "Yes. Isn't it?" The second senior brother blinked at Garen. Garen was shocked. "You know. Okay, we have all seen the changes in you. Otherwise, why do you think the master is so lenient to you? Your talent is the best among us. It depends on how far you can develop in the future." Falak smiled and patted Garen on the shoulder. For the young junior brother with astonishing talent, he, his senior sister, and the third junior brother all watched Garen's growth with a gratified attitude, and imparted all their experience and skills to Garen without hesitation. Because the power of Galen is the power of the entire colossal elephant sect, the power of the whole. Just like he and his senior sister don't actually have a very good relationship. They have more of a competitive relationship with each other, and conflicts often occur during normal discussions. But there won't really be any conflict. Because the conflict between the two people is actually an internal consumption of the overall strength, which is not beneficial to others or themselves. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 48. For 10 or 20 days in a row, Garen practiced Baiun fighting skills under the supervision and guidance of his second senior brother. After correcting all the mistakes that might lead to hidden injuries to his body, his second senior brother Farrak had free time to deal with his own affairs. Because of the personal guidance of his second senior brother Farrak every day, Garen had no way to use the 2 attribute points he had accumulated over the past few days. Once used, this sudden enhancement will make the second senior brother realize that something is wrong, which may expose the secret of his superpower. Bang! Bang! In a bright training room, 2 black iron rods as thick as arms were hit hard on Garen's back and chest. The fine beads of sweat were smashed open and splashed on the concrete floor under his feet. The 2 strong martial arts students were panting and holding up the iron bars. They no longer had the strength to lift them up and continue beating them. "Okay, please, go down and rest first." Garen straightened up and stretched the muscles of his upper body. Its senior brother Jialong. The two students hurriedly put down the iron bars and hurried out of the room as if they were amnesty. Garen was the only one standing in the center of the room. White light came in from the side windows and fell on his naked upper body, reflecting the wet sheen of sweat. Call. Garen let out a long breath, and his muscles gradually relaxed. There was a faint sound of accordion music and noisy people on the street outside the room. It was densely packed and extremely lively. Garen glanced at the window. Recently, the city government held a celebration event for the completion of the central statue. It was so lively for many days in a row. Go to the window and look down. This is a street-facing practice room in the martial arts hall on the second floor. You can see the street scene at the entrance of the martial arts hall. A group of children wearing red clothes and black hats were walking past the entrance of the martial arts gym. They were holding small flags with the Confederate flag printed with black and white stripes. These children looked around from time to time, and the queue was in a mess. However, their delicate skin and cute and innocent faces immediately attracted a large number of people on both sides of the street to watch the fun. There are also relatives and parents who follow the team and cheer for their children. Waves of chaotic shouts were mixed together, and there was a vague rhythm. On both sides of the street, people have set up several rectangular tables with white tablecloths, and are placing fruit, pastries, and cakes on them. Some people have already gone to the table and sat down to taste it, including many beautiful little girls. Even on the second floor, Galen could smell the strong sweet aroma of bread and cakes, as well as the aroma of wheat cakes and pea cakes. The two students who had just helped Garen beat his body were also among them. They were sitting next to the two girls with their faces in laughter. Garen couldn't help but laugh. No wonder they are so reluctant. That's for sure. You haven't forgotten what holiday today is, have you? Third senior brother Garcia's voice sounded from behind. Garen turned around and saw that Garcia's head was shaved, not a single white hair was left, and the top of his head was covered with bandages. Wearing a white suit gives people a weird feeling like a monk wearing a suit. What festival? Hasn't the central statue built by the city government been completed? Garen was stunned and then asked. It's the carnival. The carnival? Garcia rubbed his head speechlessly. Have you lost your mind while practicing? Even during the carnival, you hide in the house and practice alone. This is only once a year. Festival. It's a carnival, Garen suddenly realized. I almost forgot about the carnival on December 30th every year. He grabbed the clothes on the rack and slowly put them on, covering the strong muscles of his upper body. What about you, third senior brother? Why do you have time to go back to the martial arts gym? Shouldn't you go out and have fun these days? Garcia said angrily, if I hadn't been injured during my sparring session with my senior sister, it would have been your turn to ask me to go out and play. Okay, hurry up and move quickly. You should have someone to visit anyway, right? Yes, Garen smiled, got dressed, and picked up the key hanging on the shelf. Then I'll leave first. Thank you, third brother. If you hadn't reminded me, I would have missed important things today. Thank you. Just bring me something delicious when you come back. Garcia waved his hand. Garen left the practice room, rinsed the sweat from his hair and face with tap water, and went straight out the door. As soon as they walked out of the door, there was a sudden rush of heat outside. People gathered around both sides of the street, watching the parade slowly passing by in the center of the street. At this time, an acrobatic troupe was slowly passing by. From time to time, doves conjured by magic fluttered into the sky. Galen walked slowly along the street toward Burnington Street. After turning a few intersections, I bought a few egg tarts and 2 glasses of tomato juice from a roadside vendor stall, and walked directly to the Dolphin Antique Shop with them in my hand. The antique shop was open, and it was noon. Old man Gawo sat at the door of the shop with a wooden stool, smiling at the beautiful girls passing by outside from time to time. The girls wore cool red skirts and white stockings. From time to time they raised the fluffy silver threads on their hands and shouted slogans. Ari Academy. Always the strongest. The girls were only 16 or 17 years old. They looked youthful and energetic. They were passing by the antique store in neat rows. Garin stood on the side of the street across the group of girls and looked at the old man opposite. He smiled at him and raised the food in his hand. He is strong and tall, with short black-purple hair and dark red eyes that are extremely conspicuous, and he has a handsome face. In addition, he has become stronger and stronger recently, and his physical fitness is getting better and better. The energy he generates is like a scalding furnace. Very eye-catching next to the team. From time to time, girls in the team would raise their eyebrows at him, looking very interested. "Hey, handsome guy." A blonde beauty left the team slightly and bumped into Garin, who was standing aside. The beauty looked at Garin with dark blue eyes, seemingly teasingly. With a silent flick in his hand, a small white note hit Garin and was caught by him. "You are very beautiful." "But..." Garin shrugged, holding the note and shaking his head slightly. Disappointment suddenly flashed in the blonde's eyes. The girls' team slowly walked away, and chants continued to be heard from time to time. There were a lot of people watching the excitement on the streets on both sides. Garin squeezed through a few people blocking the way and walked towards the antique shop opposite. "Old man, how are you doing?" "It's a holiday." He sat down directly on the steps next to Old Man Gaywo, not caring about the dust on it. Then he handed over the tomato juice and egg tart in his hand. "It's still the same. The girl from Yale Academy just now is pretty, isn't she? Are you tempted? I saw someone taking the initiative to hand you a note." Old Man Gaywo had a lewd smile on his face. "You are still so lustful at your age." Garin was speechless. "Mom," a little boy ran past Garin, lost his footing and fell down. Garin picked up the boy and helped him stand still. The boy actually didn't cry. He continued to run forward and ran forward, throwing himself into the arms of a beautiful young woman. The young woman smiled kindly at Garin, expressed her thanks, turned around and walked away with the little boy in her hand. Old Man Gaywo looked at the little boy's figure, a trace of loneliness flashed in his eyes. "If my grandson is still around, he should be about the same age as him." Garin heard the sadness in the old man's words. He didn't respond. He just took a sip of tomato juice and looked at the busy street, waiting for the old man's next words. "It was because of me that my son and daughter were implicated. It's a pity." Old Man Gaywo took a sip of tomato juice and slurred in his mouth. "It's a pity, there is no regret medicine in this world." "What's the point of regretting something?" Garin said lightly, looking back at the past. "I think the only point is to learn lessons and grow." The old man smiled. "You are still young and don't understand." He took a long breath. "When you are old enough that memories account for most of your life, you will understand." "Maybe," Garin said noncommittally, his face expressionless. "Boy Galen," the old man suddenly became more formal in his tone, "have you always been curious about me opening an antique shop here by myself?" "Curious? Why should you be curious? Wouldn't it be nice to just live a normal life like this?" Garin gave the old man a strange look. "By the way, do you want to continue studying today?" "Of course, learning this kind of thing must be persisted every day and cannot be stopped." The old man calmed down and stood up. "Come in, today is a holiday, so I will give you a special treatment." Garin stood up inexplicably and walked into the antique store. He watched the old man close the door and illuminate the room with a beam of light coming from the small window above the door. Old Man Gaywo took out two large books from the back room, sat down on the desk, and pointed at the two books. "These two books are the standard textbooks that I will focus on explaining to you in the future. You can browse them at will. There will definitely be no major errors in the contents. I have carefully analyzed and corrected them. Don't worry." Thank you. Garen casually opened the book above and saw that the pages were full of annotations and key points recorded in red pen. When he flipped through the pages, he found that the entire tome of more than 2,000 pages was filled with notes. He changed the book below and opened it. It still had the same scene inside. These are 2 books that I annotated a long time ago. All errors and omissions have been corrected. They were originally prepared for my grandson, but I didn't expect that they would be used by you first, the old man added. Garen smiled, knowing that the old man had specially prepared this book for him. He was just afraid that he would be under great pressure, so he deliberately said that it was for other people and gave it to him by the way. Because the notes on the page are all very new, and some time ago he accidentally told the old man that he wanted systematic study materials, but he didn't expect that he actually got 2 tomes out for him today. To be honest, looking at the pages of the tome filled with detailed annotations and corrections, Garen was a little moved. I don't know how much time the old man secretly spent on these information annotations. After reading these 2 books, will you be able to get started if you master them all? He closed the 2 tomes and asked. Almost. The next step is to practice step-by-step appraisal. You must go through the objects with your own hands to truly improve your appraisal level. In addition, you must know the characteristics and history of various objects. The old man took out a pair of glasses, slowly began to be wiped. Garen took the stool and sat down, nodded, and sat upright opposite the old man. What should we talk about today? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 49. You already know almost all the theoretical knowledge. As long as you integrate these 2 books and add practice, you will get started. Today's task is to officially start reading these 2 books. You can also take them back and read them yourself. Verbal everything I can say is in this book. If you have any questions after reading it, come back and ask me, the old man said slowly. Garen nodded, opened the book, and began to read carefully from the beginning. Time passed quickly, more than 2 hours passed. Garen let out a long sigh of relief, wrote down the pages he saw, and closed the book gently. Today is the carnival. Old man, I have to go back to spend the festival with my family. It's almost 3 o'clock now, so I have to go back. Take the book and go quickly. I have to meet some old friends here soon. Don't delay my business. The old man looked down at the book and waved it impatiently, as if he wanted him to leave quickly. Garen smiled and picked up 2 books. Then I'll go back first. Come back tomorrow. Well, hurry up and go. It makes me upset when I see you taking such a long time. The old man still didn't raise his head. Remember to write down the questions you need to ask on paper tomorrow. New. Garen laid out the books and walked out of the shop. He looked back at the old man with a smile on his face. You obviously don't have anyone to celebrate the holidays with you, so why are you talking about going to see old friends? If you really had friends, no one would come to see you for so long. This old man is just stubborn. After walking a few steps along the street was filled with pink petals and white paper flowers scattered during the festival, as well as some pigeon feathers and trampled cakes. Before Galen had gone far, he saw Grace standing next to a white car at the entrance of Burnington Street with a serious expression, as if she was waiting for him. Garen walked over quickly. What's the matter? Taylor Mercury is here. He asked my company to help identify something. Grace replied in a low voice, let's talk in the car first. Garen frowned. When he heard that Mercury in the tower came to find Grace, his heart suddenly jumped. Opening the car door, the 2 of them sat in the front seat side by side, slammed the door, and rolled up the window. The sound of the festival procession outside suddenly became much quieter. Grace then took out a photo from her bag and handed it to Garen. This morning Tali Mercury suddenly came to visit and took out this thing, saying that he wanted me to identify it. Garin took the photo and looked at what was on it, and was suddenly startled. In the photo, it is the bronze cross medal he left in Yinsha Castle. This is it. He looked carefully at the medal on the photo. It was a black and white photo taken from a very close angle and looked very clear. Didn't Mercury in Tali investigate Yinsha Castle very carefully? Doesn't he know the origin of this medal? He asked in a low voice. Of course I know, but what the great detective wants to investigate is not the origin of the information. Grace's eyes were extremely serious, but the origin of this medal before Yinsha Castle. Before, Garin was shocked, and suddenly recalled the series of strange events he encountered in Yinsha Castle. At that time, his arms were almost broken, and he fled back in embarrassment. It seems that they are in the same trouble as me. He looked out the window at the festival procession passing by. A group of children wearing knights' fake armor were holding balloons and feather rackets and waving them constantly. Garin closed his eyes and opened them again. There was a hint of heaviness and seriousness in his eyes. Where is the great detective now? It's in our company. Let's go find him, Garin said solemnly. He looked out the window and murmured, if possible, maybe I can use the hands of this great detective to figure out what I encountered in Yinsha Castle last time. He had a vague feeling that Yinsha Castle might be the beginning of everything. Okay, Grace responded, started the car, and drove forward slowly along the flow of people. In a small room in a building facing the street. Ha ha ha, Mr. Tali Mercury, long time no see. Garin laughed and gave Tali Mercury a hug. It's been a long time indeed. A happy smile appeared on Tali Mercury's face. Mr. Kelly, the person from Jinhuan didn't make things difficult for you at that time, right? I asked people to look for you everywhere afterwards, but unfortunately there was no news. I didn't expect that I met you here. Everything in this world is really amazing. The great detective still held a pipe and wore a black windbreaker. Standing next to him was a beautiful lady in a white dress and a feathered round hat. Her hands were naturally folded on her lower abdomen, showing a graceful and elegant temperament. Who is this? This is my wife Marianne, Mercury introduced the woman. Hello, dear Mrs. Quicksilver. Garin smiled and nodded. Kelly, you're welcome, Marianne responded with a gentle and elegant smile. The three of them sat down on the sofa. After Garin sat down, he carefully took out a photo, which was a photo of the bronze cross. Mr. Mercury, in fact, I am a professional appraiser of Manlet & Company. The thing you want to appraise happened to pass through my hands. As soon as I heard that it was your object, I immediately took it over and came to see it in person. It's been a month or two since we last said goodbye, and time really flies by. Yeah. I didn't expect that Mr. Kelly himself would actually hinder the work of Manlet & Company. This is also a coincidence. Tali Mercury nodded and smiled. I just don't know if Mr. Kelly has identified the origin of such a thing. When Garin heard this, he frowned and fell silent. He seems to be thinking about something to remember. The other two were not in a hurry, they just sat quietly, waiting for him to speak. After a few minutes, Garin slowly spoke. To be honest, this kind of thing is probably a legacy of a huge country more than 1,000 years ago. A product from 1,000 years ago. The Mercury couple were both shocked. Yes, thousands of years ago, there was an ancient empire called Nadima, which existed in what is now the Federal Territory. There is very little information left about this empire. I can only judge from the style of this medal. It is the products of that time, the specific origin. I'm sorry that I can't do anything about it. Garin sighed. This was not his own identification, but the identification result given by the appraiser of the Manlet & Company. She was just telling the truth. Is that so? Tali Mercury and his wife looked at each other, their expressions a little ugly. But Garin hesitated. There are some things I don't know whether to say or not. Tali Mercury narrowed his eyes and said quickly, Mr. Kelly, speak directly if you have something to say. We are friends who share will and woe, so there is nothing to be scrupulous about. Garin glanced at him, saw his affirmative look, and made a determined look. In this case, whether you believe it or not, I will tell you some other identification results. He paused. No, maybe it shouldn't be the result of the appraisal, but a special feeling of mine. He glanced at the two of them. I think this metal should be an antique of bad luck. Antique of bad luck. Tali Mercury was stunned for a moment, and then he immediately reacted and murmured, I should have thought of it. I should have thought of it earlier. Mrs. Mercury sat aside, with a slight sweat on her forehead, looking at her husband's actions with a hint of worry. Yes, they are antiques of misfortune, Garin confirmed. I have an extraordinary talent for antiques of misfortune. As long as it is this kind of antique, I have enough confidence to identify it. But, I don't know if Mr. Mercury can identify it. Let me see this metal for myself. Before I returned to the company, the other appraisers returned the item to you too, and I didn't have time to get it. This is no problem. Tali Mercury reacted immediately, with a hint of anxiety in his eyes, and hurriedly took out a small black box from the inner pocket of his jacket. Garin took the box and opened it with a snap. Lying quietly inside the black velvet was a purple-red metal, which was exactly the metal he left in Yinshaw Castle. Galen carefully placed the box on the coffee table and gently picked up the bronze cross. As soon as he got it, his face was shocked. I feel that the potential contained in the metal is even greater. A biting cold breath slowly flowed from the metal into Garin's body. Holding the metal in your hand is no different than holding an ice cube. This already has 1/10 of the potential content of the black jade plate. At least twice as many metals as before. Could it be? Garin's heart skipped a beat, and he suddenly thought of a possibility. He looked up at Tali Mercury, who was sitting opposite, and said in a deep voice, Mr. Tali, please answer my question. Did someone get into trouble before you got this metal? How do you know? Tali Mercury's eyes opened, he stood up suddenly, his breathing suddenly became rapid. Calm down. Calm down. Mrs. Mercury quickly supported her husband and pushed him down to sit down. Listen to Mr. Kelly first. Call. Tali Mercury took a deep breath. Sorry Mr. Kelly, I was rude. It doesn't matter, just call me Kelly. We should be considered friends, right? Garin nodded. Okay, Kelly, can you tell me why you can tell that someone is in trouble? Although Tali Mercury sat down, his eyes were still staring at Garin's eyes. This is very important to me. Did something happen to your relatives and friends? Garin continued without waiting for his answer. I'm sorry, but this is actually a talent of mine. I can actually identify the status of the antiques of misfortune. This may have something to do with my feelings. Maybe it has something to do with the fanatical attitude held by Doom Antiques. It's a feeling that's hard to explain clearly. Feeling? Well, your feeling is indeed very accurate. Presumably because of your hobby, you are the real expert who is extremely sensitive to doomed antiques. It just so happens that I need your help now, Tali Mercury said seriously. You know how to remove it? Is this the bad luck of antiques? Something happened to the son of my friend Bai Ying. Something happened. What happened? Garin asked in a deep voice. He owed Tali Mercury a favor because of the black jade plate, but he had paid off the favor after saving someone last time. Although he doesn't like Tali Mercury's daughter very much, he still has a favorable impression of him himself. After all, no matter what, the black jade plate helped him tremendously. Now he is getting stronger every moment. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 50. Tali Mercury picked up the coffee on the table, took a sip, calmed down, and then spoke slowly. Since the people from the Golden Circle came over that time, a lot of things have happened one after another. By chance, my old friend Saiwika, the son of White Eagle, accidentally got this cross medal, and then something suddenly happened while he was at Silver Shape Castle. What happened? Garen asked. I fell from the castle tower, Mercury in the tower side. If there wasn't something blocking it below, I might not have been saved at that time. But even so, Saiwaka was still unconscious, and she didn't know that she had fallen. Where? Ms. Marion on the side continued, the strange thing is that the doctor has checked Saiwaka's whole body and there is no brain injury, but he is not awake. He is still lying on the hospital bed without moving, she also said with a worried look on his face. If possible, I hope Mr. Kelly can help us. Garen frowned and looked at Tailai Mercury and Ms. Marion in front of him. It was obvious that they regarded him as some special person with mysterious power. They hoped that his mystery could solve the problem of Saiwaka's child. I'm sorry, he crossed his fingers with a look of embarrassment, I only perceive and distinguish the antiques of misfortune. They don't have the mysterious power you think. I'm just an ordinary person with some special talents. But, Civica's illness. Stop talking about Marianne. Tailai Mercury stopped his wife's words and said, I can see that Kelly really has nothing to do. He didn't lie. The great detective frowned and gradually returned to his usual calmness and wisdom. It seems we have to start with the origin of this medal. I remember that nothing happened when I lived in Yinsha Castle for so long. Why did something happen to Saiwaka as soon as she left? It's time to analyze it carefully. Garen nodded, I have been idle recently, so I will check the situation with you. I can also remind you in time if you encounter an antique of bad luck. The so-called bad luck, I always thought was a false rumor, but now that Mr. Kelly has revealed the situation, it seems that there may really be some secret in it. No matter, Tailai Mercury stood up, if the bad luck antique is really useful, and Saiwaka happened with this medal, so if we want to investigate clearly, we still have to go and try it ourselves with the medal. I'll go. Suddenly, a male voice came from the window. Beside the half-open window, a white figure came in and stood still, sitting on the corner of the sofa. It was a blond man wearing a white windbreaker. What happened to my son must have been caused by people from Jinhuan. Talking about bad luck or not is all alarmism. In this world, there has always been only noise caused by people pretending to be gods. Garen looked up and recognized this man as the blond man who appeared next to the two children that night. At that time, this man accused him of being too cruel and that his martial arts had gone astray. Who is this? He is Bai Ying, and he is also my best friend. Tailai Mercury stood up and introduced. At the same time, Bai Ying was also introduced to Garen's current disguised identity, Kelly. The White Eagle's falcon-like gaze swept over Garen and nodded, maybe it's all up to you this time. He didn't recognize Garen at all as the suspected disciple of the elephant sect that night. It's okay. Tailai and I share the same sorrows, and it's important for friends to help each other. Besides, this matter is related to the antiques of misfortune, and I'm very interested in it. Garen waved his hand and said, okay, no talking too much. When should we go to Yinsha Castle? Tomorrow, we will meet up at the Manlet and Company early tomorrow morning and go to Yinsha Castle together, Tailai Mercury suggested. No problem. Okay. Then it's settled. Tailai Mercury put away the medal on the table. I originally got this medal from Saiwaka, but I just took it for identification because I thought it was suspicious. I didn't expect this to happen. Don't worry too much, everything will get better. Garen sighed and patted Tailai Mercury on the shoulder. There are two reasons why he is so kind. One is because the gift of Mercury in Tailai has always been intended to compensate. The second is that he himself has a strong curiosity about the secrets of doomed antiques. After all, he was tricked once in Yinsha Castle. Then it's the festival today, so I have to go and prepare an explanation first. Garen stood up, I'll excuse you now. Please. Please. The Mercury couple quickly stood up politely. You three can rest here as you like. I'll excuse you now. Garen turned around and left the room. When he closed the door, he glanced at Bai Ying one last time, with a hint of fear on his face. That guy was hiding outside the window just now, listening to me, and I didn't notice it at all. This guy is pretty good. Grace stood at the door waiting for him. The two of them walked downstairs of the company together. This is a branch of my company that I am responsible for. I can freely arrange the use of this building. In addition, the investigation of the situation you want has been detailed. She handed Garen a piece of information. I took the information and looked at it. Garen's frown deepened. There are no obvious injuries on the whole body. Is the initial diagnosis a cardiac arrest? Yes, it may be toxins or other means. So far, the opponent has started to take action again, and this time his determination seems to be very strong. I just didn't expect to take action at this critical moment. I may not be able to leave for the time being. Yes, Grace was confused. It's okay. I'll investigate this matter personally with the great detective. It's just in time to achieve my plan. Garen narrowed his eyes and said calmly. Grace didn't know what his plan was, but she nodded anyway. Do you need anything to prepare? If you can, get me a gun. Garen smiled. When he returned home that night, Garen had a dull carnival with his parents and sister. They just had a meal at home and chatted about the recent situation together. After a simple wash, I went to bed. Early the next morning, after putting on makeup, he arrived at the branch of Manlet & Company, where Taileye Mercury and White Eagle were already waiting for him. You guys are here quite early. Shall we go by car? In front of the building, Mercury and White Eagle stood together in the tower. Marianne from yesterday was not there, nor was Detective Mercury's former beautiful assistant. Next to the two of them, there was a bright black car with two large gold fisheye-like light bulbs standing on the front, like dead fish eyes. I'll drive directly to Yinshaw Castle. Are everything ready? Taileye Shuiyan opened the car door and got in. Bai Ying and Garen also sat in. After slamming the car door shut, Bai Ying took out a cigarette from his pocket, held it in his mouth, and handed one to Garen. Thank you, I don't smoke. Mr. Kelly, I really want to trouble you this time. Bai Ying lit the cigarette, took a deep breath, and slowly blew out a white smoke ring. Whether things go well or not, I owe you a favor. You are a friend of Mercury in Taileye, and that is my friend. What are you talking about among friends? Besides, this is my wish. Garen smiled. I can see that you are a man of integrity. Worth knowing. You too. Bai Ying laughed. The car started slowly and drove from the door of the building into the traffic on the street. More than 10 minutes later, the car slowly drove out of the urban area of Huaishan City, along a khaki lane, and quickly advanced among the withered yellow grass slopes all over the mountains and plains. In the car, Galen played with the black pistol in his hand, turning it over and over carefully, looking eager to try. Kelly, is this your first time touching a gun? Taileye Mercury saw Galleon's movements behind him through the reflector and asked. Yeah, isn't it completely useless in the city? I rarely get out, so I asked Grace to arrange a self-defense pistol for me. Garen played with the small pistol with interest. The pistol in this world is a kind of the revolver, can only hold 6 bullets at a time, but after firing a shot, it can automatically rotate and release a bullet, which is considered semi-automatic. Let's make an appointment to go to the shooting range when we have time, Bai Ying said casually, holding the remaining cigarette butt in his mouth. He also took out a white pistol from his waist. However, let's deal with the little mouse behind first. Before he finished speaking, he opened the car door suddenly and rolled out. Bang bang. 2 gunshots were heard in succession, and the sound of a vehicle braking suddenly came from behind. Zi. Taileye Mercury stopped the car decisively. Immediately open the door and rush out of the car. Not to be outdone, Garen looked back with a pistol. Through the car window, he saw Bai Ying shooting a tall and strong man with a gun, then somersaulting forward, rolling to the ground and then accurately killing two men in black who were following behind. There were actually two black cars behind their car. A total of 6 people got out of the car. In this short period of time, 4 of them were directly killed by Beiying, and 2 more got into the car behind. The car turned a corner and tried to run away. Beiying sneered, raised his hand and fired 2 shots. Boom! The car that was turning exploded and burst into flames, and a strong smell of gasoline and burnt smell slowly drifted over. Garin had just gotten out of the car and the battle was already over. Such fast movements, such accurate marksmanship, seeing Beiying's killing efficiency, Garin was also slightly shocked. The red flames made the 3 people's faces turn slightly red. Mercury in Tail Eye leaned over and inspected the body. He's from the Golden Circle. These disgusting little mice, Beiying spat, and shook his white windbreaker to shake off all the dirt and grass clippings that had just rolled to the ground. He turned around and saw Garin also getting out of the car. He was not timid when seeing such a scene, and there was a flash of appreciation in his eyes. Mr. Kelly seems to have experienced many such scenes. It seems that you were the one who solved the problem of the Golden Circle last time. Can we discuss it with you if you have time? I'm not a professional combatant like you. I'm just interested in antiques. And you know, even if you're not used to this in our line of work, you can't do it. Garin shrugged and said with a bitter smile. That's true. Okay, let's get in the car first. Gentlemen, matters like murder and arson should be left to specialized combatants like us. Beiying kicked the corpse at his feet and turned towards the car. The other 2 people also got into the car. Starting the car, the 3 of them continued to accelerate forward. For a moment, no one in the carriage was able to speak first. Garin glanced at Beiying. This guy seemed relaxed, but in fact he was obviously in a state of high vigilance. It is said that he and Tail Eye Mercury were both injured by the Golden Ring's explosive ambush last time. They were obviously deeply impressed by that lesson and were not at all weak or careless like their previous opponents. Tail Eye Mercury was driving the car intently, his eyes were deep, as if he was thinking about something. Anyway, since the highly vigilant White Eagle is here, why not take a break? Garin simply closed his eyes to rest, and finally fell asleep slowly.